Welcome to the Bold SLP podcast. We are so happy that you're here and can't wait to share with you all of the amazing conversations we've been having.
We are the co-founders of the Bold SLP Collective, and we are also your hosts, Lisa, Desi, and myself, Ingrid. Each of us has a variety of experiences in all things bilingual and bimodal speech-language pathology. You'll get to know us pretty well on here.
We started this podcast to share our lived experiences, but also because we want to bring advocacy and cultural humility to the forefront of every speech therapy conversation. We hope that you'll join us each week, and we hope that you enjoy this episode.
Welcome back to the Bold SLP podcast. I'm Lisa. I'm here with Ingrid, and we have a very special guest that we're super excited about. Ingrid and I were just losing our minds about the fact that she even agreed to come talk to us.
Yes.
So please, Jordyn Carroll, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. And thank you because I see the love you give me on Instagram. Like I appreciate that. And I know it, I see it. I appreciate it all. I'm Jordyn Carroll, also known as JRC, the SLP on Instagram. I'm a speech language pathologist. I went to Howard for graduate school. I also went to PWI for undergrad, which I feel like really informs everything that I do. So I started my social media page just to be representation and be a face for people to see. And then I've come a long way since, and I've been able to, I feel like, make a difference in the field, and I want to continue to do so and inspire others to do the same. So I'm happy to be here on the Bold SLP podcast.
Yes.
Yay.
You said
so glad you're here.
PWI. Could you tell us what that means for those who don't know?
A PWI is a predominantly white institution, and then Howard University is an HBCU, which is a historically Black college or university. So I went to, my PWI, predominantly white institution, was 3% Black, which is the same as the field we're in now. So I got, I thought that was just the school. And then I got into the field and I was like, oh, it's the whole thing.
The whole thing.
So here I am.
Oh my goodness. How do you know these stats right off the bat? For your school, for the PWI, did you ask as soon as you got there? Is this new information you got?
I think this is going to get into the first question, but I became who I am today from my PWI, from going there, because I learned how to be an advocate. I learned how to be an activist, and I definitely looked and found that information. I was like, it's a lot of white people, there's not a lot of us. So what does that breakdown look like? And also, it's always been something that's really important to me. I almost didn't go to my undergrad. I went because I got a scholarship to play basketball. So it was the financially smart decision. But even going into the schools, I was looking at all those demographics because I knew what I wanted to be around. I made that a conscious decision, even in high school, which high school do I want to go to? I want to go to the one that's more diverse. I've always been that way. So yeah, I've just always been aware of it.
Did you grow up around Black people? Were you kind of I don't know, because Ingrid and I grew up, well, you grew up in Mexico, Ingrid, but I grew up in Canada, and everybody was white around me. And it was very exciting if I saw another Sri Lankan or Black person until I went to church, and then everybody was the same culture as me. Right.
I had a good mix. So I'm from Southern California. So it's pretty diverse. There's people from all of my best friends are first generation, or a lot of my best friends growing up were first generation immigrants from Mexico.
I was going to say, I was born in Southern California.
Yeah, so some of my closest friends, and even just that, beyond that, it's a diverse area. We have a lot of Polynesian, I grew up around a lot of Tongans and a lot of different types of Asians and all these different things. So where I grew up was pretty diverse, but we had a strong Black community. So we were in an area where you might have to seek each other out, but you knew they were there and they were always among you. You were never felt alone. But there were differences where I was the only Black person, or I would go to certain camps, or I would go to Apple Camp and me and my brother would be the only Black people there, and different things like that where we knew the differences, And even when I was born in Florida and I moved to California when I was 6, And when I first moved, my mom's a teacher. We worked at a school that was in Temecula, which is like wine country, and it's really white. And I just remember like on the drive home from school, my mom would be on the phone with her sister, like, I got to get away from like all these blonde hair and blue eyes. Like, this is not good for my kids, like, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
I remember being like 7 years old, like, I wonder what she means. Like, and it obviously still stuck with me because I remember it, you know. But yeah, so something I've always been aware of, and my parents were aware of as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, it sounds like a very empowering relationship you had. Because in the last interview we just did, we were talking about how we were just like dying to fit in as kids and just wanted to change anything and everything about ourselves to come close to this like quote unquote standard. But that was not your experience, I guess. You just knew right off the bat, I'm good with who I am.
You know, I won't say that.
Oh, no.
No, definitely won't say that. I think I went through a lot. I mean, even just like with my hair was the biggest thing, I would say, like just accepting my hair, my skin color. And because California is so diverse, like there are Black people, but like there's a lot of other people too, you know? Like, so I definitely was not ever like necessarily the beauty standard or like the one that people like look to in that way. So I definitely took a while for me to be comfortable in who I am. But I will say it's something that like my parents wanted for me and I knew they wanted for me. It takes a minute for you to step into that, I feel like, you know. But yeah, definitely a process. And then when I went to a PWI, when I went to undergrad, it was like kind of like reversing, like it was like a reversal of that. Like I feel like I grew into who I am going into high school. I have great friends, still friends with most of them, and had just like great relationships in high school. And then I went to undergrad, and it was just like a culture shock. I felt so out of place. Did not feel like I belonged, did not feel like I could be accepting of myself. Like I had to fit in, you know, like not that I wanted to, but like I had to survive here and I had to figure that out. So yeah, definitely something I understand completely.
There's so many twists and turns in this journey right now because you had your mother who was empowering you and being like, we need to create this safe space for Jordyn so that she doesn't feel, othered. But then still you had your own journey to get through and just like believe and know your beauty. Mm-hmm. And then going to school and having you just revert back to all those awful thoughts. My goodness. And then empowered again at Howard
definitely empowered again at Howard. And I also think this is something that's not really talked about enough is that between the generations of Black Americans and even like international Black people, like there's different forms of empowerment. Like my mom empowered me, and my dad too. My dad was like the one. And so they were both very empowering, and they told me like, you are an amazing Black girl. Like these are some things that you're going to experience. And, this is how you need to be. And it's very much something I talk about is respectability politics, because older generations are like, this is the way you have to be accepted in white society. And like, this is the way that it's been for me. And this is what you have to do. And that's like, it makes sense. I understand why you feel that way. But our generation now is coming back like, like I want to wear natural hair and I want to wear hoops in a professional setting. And, like I want tattoos and I want all these things. So that was a little bit of a issue between like the generations with like my parents. Like it took a long time for me to convince my mom to let me wear my natural hair, because for her it's like that's not what you do, like that is not how you present yourself in society. So yeah, definitely my own journey, and also had my parents empowering me and like the conflicting beliefs there. So yeah, it's complicated.
It's complicated.
It's similar to me with accents. You have to sound as American as possible. Otherwise, you won't be seen as equal or as smart or
educated. Yeah.
As educated. And as you can tell, like my Spanish accent was completely erased out of my life.
Right.
Because it was like really beaten into me. Like I had to sound American.
No, I get that completely. Just growing up where I'm from, like I have friends that were, speak Spanish fluently and like are really in touch with that culture. And then other friends who are generation immigrants but don't speak Spanish, aren't really in touch with that side of their culture, because that's what their family wanted for them. Like they want you to fit in here, like that's what you came here for. So I definitely get both sides, but it's tough, especially being the kid that's like, what do I do?
Yeah, you're in the middle. And the thing that we say all the time is like, I'm not Mexican enough for my Mexican family, and then I'm not American enough for the Americans.
Yeah, so I get it.
My parents are both refugees from Sri Lanka. And I never heard their accent until I went to grad school. And we started talking about what it was, articulation and different kinds of therapies. And I called my mom for something unrelated. And that was the first time I heard like, oh, this is what we talked about in our take, where like this error is like a disorder or some kind of nonsense. And I was like, do my parents have accents? I really just never heard it. And of course we went to a Tamil church. So all the other adults spoke like them. And so it never occurred to me that it was different. I just thought like, this is how white people talk, this is how brown people talk. It never was like this is wrong and this is right until I got to grad school. And I was like embarrassed at some point. And it was just these weird thoughts started creeping up that weren't there before. I mean, I had a pile of insecurities over other things, but now this was like an added thing.
Yeah.
But before going into all my insecurities, I just wanted to say that like your page is so ridiculously empowering. Like I know you know, but I just need to like keep repeating it because I never thought to show my face on Instagram or ever until I saw your page. So I saw your page and I was like, well, she's like so much better and smarter. So like, I can't even be like that. But then I listened to your podcast, Views from the 8%. And there was, I don't know if it was the first episode or which one it was, but you had mentioned that like you walked into this space and you felt it was intentional. It was intentional that so many people were white. And you're like, I just need to put my face out there. Even if I have nothing to say, I just have to put my face. And I was like, she's so right. Just put your face out there. And let me tell you, I had things to say. So it was like, it was a bonus because my face was out there and I was saying things. And I was like, we do belong in this world, no matter how much people make us feel that we don't. And they don't explicitly say you don't belong. Some do, but they don't explicitly say it. But it's just in the vibe, you know, you just know, like, am I welcome here? I don't know.
No, that really resonated me. I feel like I never know what I have to say until I start talking. Then I'm like, ooh, you know, there's a lot that's coming out right now.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm like, I feel like I got on and I was like, yeah, I belong here, but then I didn't know if it was my place to speak on the things that mattered to me in my community. And then, you know, through meeting so many of you, I was like, yeah, if I have to do it, if it's something that matters to me.
In our last interview, Tiffany was saying that she worried about running out of content. And we never run out. Let me tell you, every day is a new day for something to go right or something to go wrong. But it's no longer my worry. I think it was my initial worry joining like the social media movement. And you don't even have to write the 17 paragraphs that many SLPs write at the end of their posts. It's just like, it's so impactful, just the little things that are said. And you never know who it's going to resonate with.
Exactly. And I tell people that all the time, like when they're starting their page, it's really not about like the likes or the followers, because it'll be the post or like it'll be a reel that gets the least amount of likes or like the least amount of views, and somebody will like talk to me personally, like this had an impact on me and this is how it changed my practice. And I'm like, none of the other stuff even matters. Like literally does not matter. That's not what it's here for. And then again with like the content, like running on the content. I don't plan content. I don't like make content ahead of time. Like I don't do any of that because I feel like, and this is just my opinion, I feel like you can tell when that's what people are doing. Like you can tell when it's a fluff post, like you're just posting because you needed something to post. Like I've never been a fan of doing that. Like I don't want that to be my page. I want like when I post something, you can tell I care about it. Like you can tell that I'm passionate about this and that's why I'm talking about it, you know? So I think that's always my biggest advice is like, don't worry about like how often or how much you need to post. Like post something you care about and it'll resonate with somebody. Post something if you care about it, like it'll show off and it'll come off that way. I think that makes a really big difference.
Yeah, we agree. We don't plan anything.
Yeah, I know. We should plan a little bit though, honestly.
We need to plan a little more, but no.
I'm like,
but this idea of like content batching and posting 3 times a week, and you know, you hear these rules for the algorithm, and it never resonated with me from the start. I was like, I don't understand this, and it feels fake. And it's not to call out any fake accounts is just for me and for myself, and like not even my brand, just who I am as a person. I will feel icky if I post something for the sake of posting. You know, it's
Yeah.
just I feel that. But what I love is the community that we're able to find, because the ones who it resonates with are the ones that we want to talk to more, and it just spreads and spreads and spreads. And I knew you from afar, Jordyn, like from Instagram, but then you had shared something that I had posted one day when I had like 4 followers. Like, I mean, I don't even have that many now, but it didn't even matter to you. You were like, yep, this makes sense. And it was about the CDC. I was saying, like, they had changed the milestones. And
Mhm.
I had mentioned that, like, when Black and brown kids were falling behind in the milestones, falling behind, whatever that means, they were like put in a disorder category. And then now that white kids are falling behind, they're just like changing the
Yeah, I
whole
remember that post. I was like, man, that's a word.
Yeah, and I was like all messy, sitting on my bed, like half awake, just like putting out a thought, not thinking anybody was going to even see it. I was just a story at the time. And then so many people wrote to me like, I was too afraid to say it, but I also think that, and this is so strange. And white people, Black people, all the people,
Yeah.
and so, yeah. And then you had empowered me when you shared it. So then I just made it a reel, and now it's going to live forever. So how sometimes, I don't know if you have this feeling ever where you make it a story just because you're not sure if you want it. Do you have that?
Yeah, no, that happens. I've changed a lot of my stories into reels, and I'm like, people need to see this. Like, this needs to be on my page. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not there. Everything is a story now until I feel like sometimes I still need that validation. But speaking of your stories on Instagram, so what made you feel so bold? Feel so bold, as the name of our podcast, but what made you feel so bold at such a young age? Because you didn't graduate that long ago.
No, yeah. So I graduated in 2019. 3 years now. Yeah, it seems much longer, but only 3.
Because you're so wise. It
You're
seems
right.
much longer.
Since I was a kid, I've been told I was an old soul. I never really knew what it meant, but I've heard that my whole life. But I think what really empowered me was, like I said, in undergrad, I just realized the inequities, like in the school, like who got into the school. I played on a basketball team that was like 95% white women. And I'm just like, if you know the sport of basketball, it just doesn't make sense. And especially especially where we were, like we were in a city, like it wasn't like there weren't other people around, So again, that was a moment where I was like, this is intentional, So I realized that in undergrad. I realized that on the basketball team. And then I got kicked off the basketball team. Whole other story. Got kicked off after 2 years, right? And I had played basketball literally since I was 3 years old, like had no other identity at this school other than being Black and being a basketball player. Like that's all anybody saw me as, So after this, I'm like, I don't know what to do with my life. Like I was depressed. I was just going through it. Got a random like cryptic email about this meeting that's happening with all these women. I go into this room with these amazing, I believe it was 19 women of color that were just experiencing the same things that was happening for me, like that I had never experienced before, never like experienced overt racism, like discrimination, microaggressions constantly. And we just sat in this room for like hours just talking about our experiences. And we ended up forming the first multicultural sorority on our campus with those 19 women that met in that room. And it took a lot. Like there was so much pushback. There's a lot happening. We had people, first of all, spraying the N-word. I'm not going to say it. They're spraying the N-word like on the side of buildings. This was when this app called Yik Yak, which is like anonymous Twitter for college campuses. So people were tweeting about like how we don't need to be here, like this shouldn't be happening. We had a town hall because this is also when Donald Trump was being elected. So it was just like everything was at the height.
Right.
So this whole like racial town hall, because of the sorority that we were starting and everybody on campus was so mad about it, the largest town hall still that has ever happened at the university to this day. And there was like newspapers there, like everybody was there to report on it. And people were on Yik Yak like, hey, all the Black people are in this room. All the white people, like, let's go get outside, like wait for them outside. This is our chance to attack, basically. And like the reporters are in the room like, oh my God, like everybody's scared. I'm like, yeah, this is our reality. We had a whole where it was just like 5 of us. I was president for a year, and then I was like a vice president. So it was like the leadership was on a stage, on a podium where it was hundreds and hundreds of white students that could text in questions to us anonymously, basically asking why we're here, what we need to do, like what we're doing here, why we need to form this, why we can't join any of the other 99% white sororities, why do we feel like this is reverse racism, why do we need to start this sorority for ourselves. Like, it was a whole thing. It was a whole experience. And we survived it, you know, like the sorority is still going to this day, like definitely one of my proudest accomplishments. And it made me who I am, you know, like I went through a lot to get there, and to make sure that we stayed strong, and to make sure that like people joined us, like, because there were other white sororities like trying to take our girls, like trying to take our women, like, you don't need to join that sorority. Like, nobody wanted us to last. So for us to fight through that, and then going to Howard right after that experience where like I was the only one and we were fighting for life, like literally fighting for life. And then going to Howard, it was just like a breath of fresh air. Like, I saw amazing Black people everywhere, future doctors, future lawyers, future politicians. Like my professors were amazing. You had Dr. Perry on here, who is like, love her. You know,
my goodness.
We loved her.
Wise, that woman is wise, you know, and like those are the people I was learning from, and that definitely changed my perspective as well. So like I said, those experiences form like who I am today and everything that I do. So
were you never worried about your life?
Yes and no. I feel like I should have been. I feel like if I was there, I feel like if I was there, like now at this level of my life, I probably would have been more afraid. But at that time, I'm like, no, like this is, you know, I was ready to fight. I was young and feisty, you know, like I wasn't really thinking about myself in that moment. And I think that's the same thing. Like when I started this page, like I didn't start this for me, you know, like I wanted it to be better for the people who are coming after me. And that's exactly why we formed the sorority. Like we needed a space, and we knew we needed a space. And so to be able to have formed that is a big deal for me. And that's the same thing I wanted to do with this page and starting this community.
And I want to say that we can feel that, because when you were saying like, oh, I don't plan, I post, because a lot of the pages you go to, like, who are they doing this for? Like, are they doing this for parents? Are they doing this for future SLPs? Are they doing this to grow their private practice? Like, when we go to your page, like, we know who you're doing it for. Like, there's no question. And it's like to advocate for the 3% of SLPs who are Black, or the 8% who is not white. Like, all of us, like, you're doing it. We know exactly who you're doing it for.
That means a lot. That's probably one of the best compliments I've ever received. Thank you.
Yeah, it is very clear that you're willing to like fight the battle for future generations. It's really not for you. And I mean, it's also for you, but you're such a small part of it in your mind, I know, which I think is what keeps you humble while you do all these amazing things. Because like, it's not for me, it's for all of you. But yeah, you were like really in danger from this story that you're telling me. And if I were your mom and dad, I'd be like, Jordyn.
But it all makes sense to me why you're so brave.
Yeah, because she's been through the ringer, right? It's way worse than whatever a troll could write to her on Instagram. But speaking of fighting hard battles, I want to talk about ASHA for a second, and just how do you think they could become more inclusive?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that they can do. I think when I think of strong leadership, I think of people who are like in touch with the community that they're leading. And I don't feel like ASHA is at all. And I don't feel like they really try to be. Like, I feel like their attempts are not genuine when they like try to get in touch with the community or try to get in touch with providers about what's happening. Like, I feel like everything that comes from them, you feel an air of this is for money, or this is for like some type of status. I don't feel like it comes from a genuine place. I don't feel like they really want to help us. I don't feel like anything that they do is really for us as providers. I think, which is two separate things, I think what they feel like they're doing is for the profession as a whole. They feel like they advocate for the profession as a whole. My thing is, there can be no profession without professionals. Like there can be no profession if we are not happy, if we don't want to be in the profession. And a lot of us are leaving because we're unhappy. So I feel like they're starting from the wrong place. You know, like they're trying to advocate for all these things, which is wonderful. I'm sure, like, I don't even know really. And I think that's a problem too. Like, I don't really know what they do. Like, I don't really know. They always say that they lobby for us and for the government, but like nothing has changed in our daily routine. Nothing has changed for us, like monetarily, really. We pretty much stayed in the same place for a decade, whether that be with our like racial demographics or our median salary has definitely not kept up with like as it should. So I think like, again, like they're just starting from the wrong place. If they started with the root of the problem and like figured out why we are unhappy and how that could be the things that they're lobbying for instead of whatever they are lobbying for, which isn't helping us, I think it'll make a big difference. And then in terms of diversity, the biggest barrier is always going to be financial. It's going to be financial, and then like the lack of access and opportunities, which is like getting into grad school and like the lack of non-traditional programs. Like everybody isn't going to go straight from undergrad into grad school and be able to become an SLP. Like there's a lot of things that happen in life in between then and even before then that stop that track, and it shouldn't be as difficult as it is to, you know, become an SLP. So I think that's going to change the diversity. And then again, the financial status, like I don't know why there isn't like some type of scholarship for SLPs of color or some type of program that's dedicated to getting more of us, because we are extremely necessary. Like there's only 8% of us out of a whole 100. There's only 8% of us, and not even like the small amount of bilingual SLPs. Like there should be a program specifically for bilingual SLPs and SLPs of color, like some type of scholarship or some type of like guidance program to get them into the field, because that's what you should be focused on. That's what you claim to be focused on. And we don't see anything happening. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot we can do. We could have a whole podcast on just ASHA.
Concrete, tangible, like easy changes. I mean, we're here, we're ready to work if you have appropriate compensation and like respect. It's so easy to hide behind the profession or the courses or the I don't know what. It's easy to ignore the human aspect and just go straight to the profession. And that's happening in a lot of professions I know, like especially in the medical field, like thinking about the tools and the this and the that versus the people that are being abused and drained and exhausted. And
and you know what's ironic? Every time, I mean, it's not like it's a lot, but every time I've had a conversation with anybody of like from leadership of ASHA, they always say like, oh, you know, like you guys, meaning us SLPs, you always attack ASHA. You always attack ASHA as this like government, but we know we're just individual people and like all these different things, but which is true, you know, like you are individual people that make up an organization, and that's like your job is to represent our profession, and that means to protect and represent the professionals in the profession. I feel like there's like some type of, I don't know, something's happening there where there's a disconnect. Like there's no type of connection between the professionals and the governing body of our profession, and somebody needs to be like aligned in between there. Like, and also they really need help with their PR. Like they do a horrible job.
100%.
Anytime an issue is brought up, they do a horrible job of addressing it publicly. And I don't know why it's so difficult for them. Like, I think they just have their hands in like too many pots, literally, like where they're trying to keep people happy because they want their money. And you can't do that. You can't be neutral. You can't like keep trying to take money from every side when it's not working, because the people who are like under you are unhappy for that reason. Like you're not taking a side, and it's clear. Or it's clear that, you know, you're trying to keep a certain side happy.
I wish I remembered who was on this Clubhouse. I think it was Brittany. I can't remember her handle. I know it's Brittany. But she was saying 92% of the people who pay ASHA are white. It is in their best interest to keep the people who give them the most money happy. And she said something that really struck me. And this was 2 years ago at the beginning when I was like posting about books because I was too scared to post about the things that mattered. And she was one of the people, her and Lauren, she's Sassy SLP. They said that ASHA is never going to change until we change the system. It doesn't matter how many people go in there and try. The system doesn't need us to keep working. We're hiring more diverse people and we have all these new positions, but the system is still intact. So it's still churning out all these harmful practices. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it was a topic about supervision. And when I think it was Lauren who said, like, I can't in good faith recommend this profession to everybody, especially if I know they're going to come in and be harmed. And that like hit me because I'm like so much about mentorship and about like, yes, we need more Mexican American girls to come and do this. And I'm like, do they need to come in here and suffer this abuse sometimes that they're going to end up suffering? Because that's what it is, like racial abuse. So they really struck me. The long, winded way of saying, yeah, like ASHA needs to do. I feel like they come at us with questions that they already have the answer to, so it doesn't even really matter what we say. That's how I feel about ASHA.
Yeah, I think that they have a plan for what they want things to look like. And, they try to ask us for input. But at the end of the day, we don't really have a say. And I remember talking about that when they were hiring, I think it was a new CEO. And none of no ASHA members get a say on that. Like, we don't get to vote. There is no input. They're hired by a board, and it's the same people who are in the board for like 10, 15, 20 years, like just literally just rotating spots of leadership. Nobody else is getting in. So that in itself is problematic. I think, like you said, like the entire system needs to be changed. I don't really know how to go about that unless there was like a competitor, which is like, how do you do that? I don't know. But right now, I feel like ASHA has way too much power. Like, we get everything from them. They're supposed to be our governing body. They take all of our money. They're the only ones that have their conference. They're the only ones that have the convention where we can go and like just get a bunch of CUs at one time, where all these SLPs can convene. Like, if there was something else like that, I think it would be great, because then we would have a choice. So, anytime there's a monopoly, it's an issue. Like, that's just the way the world works, and they have the monopoly.
I'm like, my mind is so fixated on what happened to you at the PWI. No, I'm thinking about how uncomfortable it must have been for everyone in that room when you first met up with those girls, who will just like describe the microaggressions or the full-on aggressions. And then how you decided together, we need to do something about this, and went into like basically the battlefield. And that's what I'm thinking needs to happen with ASHA, where like I know you mentioned that it's a bunch of individuals, not one person make a decision, whatever, but no one is willing to be that uncomfortable the way you were to just like really make those moves and like shake it up like that. Because that was a hard thing that you did at such a young age. But it wasn't just you. It was you and like 19 other or 18 other, women of color. They were all women. Yeah, it was
all women of color.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, like you're very strong, but I don't know if you alone could have done that. You with your very strong and bold spirit had that community with you to like make that change. So right now I'm assuming, in my benefit of the doubt self, that there's one or two people who work for ASHA that are like, man, this is really bad. But it needs so many more like them to like really take a stand. And that's not what is happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I'm connecting those two moments.
I think there's more than 1 and 2 for sure.
Exactly. But are they all as strong as Jordyn? I don't know.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, there is no way. I mean, any of us could have done it without each other. Like the 19 women, like it was tough, and we needed that support. And I think that's true. Like, you need a community. I think everything takes a community. Like, there's not much you can do on your own. At least not far, you can't go far. So I think you're right. It will take, a group of people who are like, okay, like have some knowledge and, have this understanding of what needs to change, and also have the ability and the strength to change it. I also think there's another wave of people who want to change the field by changing it into like more like opening their own private practice, going into business for themselves. That's something I've seen a lot as well. And I think that will make a big difference, because like a lot of times it's really not ASHA that's abusing us. They just don't like fight for us. They don't represent us. A lot of times it's the institutions, it's the schools, it's the hospitals
Yes.
that are abusing us, you know, like, and nobody is there to fight for us. Nobody's there to support us through it. So we just suffer. And I think a lot of ways that that'll change is people going into business for themselves and hiring other SLPs and paying them well and treating them well. So I think that's another great way to go about it. But I do feel like there should be a collective change as well.
Yeah. Well, Ingrid, when you mentioned the mentorship,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same for me. Like I don't recommend that my mentees go into the public sector right now. Not the way it's going now, especially with COVID. Like you just really saw all the things that were hidden. Like, oh, this is not okay. And they're like, it's always the same group of people picking up all the slack. And then those who just don't work just didn't work. So like SLPs are like, to me, like one of the most hardworking professionals that I see that are just used to just being at the bottom of the barrel, just taking it all.
Being productive and making do and being in a closet.
Right. Well, I wasn't even thinking about the spatial situation, but just like they care deeply about their patients and their families and their clients or students, whatever. But then they're also meant to be like the liaison between anyone and everyone and their brothers, you know? So it's like, it's a lot that's put on them. And then if you like, our boundary is not servicing a client, basically. If we say, I can't take more than whatever, then 10 kids are off the list and then we look bad. So there's really like no way out except through private practice. But then access, right? Who's gonna be able to afford private practice? It's mostly white families. So it's really, yeah, I'm thinking about this like as I'm talking about it, but I
think about it a lot. I think about it a lot. What I'm thinking right now, like what my goal would be is, I still work in a school, but my goal would be to be able to work for myself full time, and then like to be able to provide like weekly language enrichment or like for free, you know, like somewhere like in the city for like once a week, and just be able to do like something like that, or at least consult with parents so they have my contact information, like be able to provide services in that way and like still provide for myself and my family. Like that would be ideal. Kind of like, what's the Robin Hood, you know, you take money from the people who have it so that you can support the people who don't. And that's really like what I would like to do eventually, because I still like the people who I want to support are still like, that's never going to change. And I want to be able to do that and still be able to live. So I think that's really the model that's my goal at this point.
What's the businessy term for that, Lisa? A scale, something. We were talking about that.
A sliding scale?
A sliding scale.
Yeah.
How much you charge.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I actually learned that recently, but you like affirmed that in our conversation, Jordyn, back when we were talking about like, you know, the family that needs it that can't afford it, and you know the family that needs it but can afford it. So you're not basing it on the need of the child, you're basing it on the income and the access. So as a private practitioner, I can make that call to be like, you know what, I will give you free services for a month because I know there's nowhere you can go. But this other family, I can even say no, and they'll go somewhere else because they can't afford it. So they make you feel like you're not being fair, or you're being selfish, or you're choosing your favorites. Not at all. I understand now, like you said, the system is very intentional for who gets service, who doesn't.
Yeah, and the sliding scale is need-based. I was going to say my partner is a clinical psychologist, and he worked at a private, you know, same thing, like private counseling center. And the owner, she was great, like was really successful, and she had like presentations that she did and like public speaking and all these different, you know, ways that she was making money. So her actual practice, it was a sliding scale. She provided like free group therapy for a lot of people, and like really was able to help the community because like she was successful elsewhere, you know, and like could seriously make a difference. Like my partner was able to have clients that would have never been able to have therapy if it wasn't for her. And like he can see the changes that, you know, came from that and would have never happened if it wasn't for her being able to do, you know, the sliding scale or being successful somewhere else. So I would love to be able to do that for people.
You will. It'll happen faster than you think. But literally, that's like one of the reasons for my TikTok is just to provide this like private practice type of conversation to the people who just can't afford it or who are just outside of my like jurisdiction, right? Because I can only practice in Quebec and New York. Those are my two licenses. Anyone else who wants anything, they won't get insurance. They'll have to pay out of pocket. So that's a whole other thing too.
And social media is such a great tool for that now too. I share social medias with parents all the time. Like they have great information. This is perfect for what you need all the time. Social media is such a great resource and it's free. Like we want to talk about access, like that is great access. And a lot of times really good information, some of you might have to double check, but a lot of times people are really just putting out like BS out there, like they're putting it out there for a reason.
Yeah. Well, going back to ASHA for a second, I think back to your like 19 women, I think social media will be the start of the rise of whoever needs to speak up. But social media is so much louder than any like ASHA leader journal, let me tell you. And so, yeah, it's not like a threat or anything. It's just like you need to see your market right now and your demographic. You're going to lose a lot of good people. And they may start their own thing and they don't want competition. So if you really want to avoid that, because competition will come once people start seeing like this is not okay, or this is not what I stand for. A lot of SLPs are just in the dark, right? I'm here to help people. So I'm going to help them in all these ableist ways I was taught. Exactly. And then boom, social media. Whoops, I shouldn't be doing this at all. Whoops. Yeah. Yep. That's just what it's done for me. Okay, I have one last question for you. I can't believe we already have to wrap up. This makes me so sad. Do you consider yourself a bilingual or bi-dialectical professional? Bi-dialectical that I learned from Dr. V?
No. I mean, I wouldn't say, that's a good question. I would say no. I would say that my dialect is more so just like who I am. It's not necessarily like something I switch in and out of. And I think I learned this. No, that wasn't from Dr. V. It was from somebody else. But somebody else was talking about like AAE, and they're like, no, it's not something I just turn on and off. Like it comes out when I'm trying to be professional. Like it comes out no matter what, no matter the situation, because this is just how I talk. It's always going to be how I talk, no matter how much I try to mask it. And she didn't say this, but now that I'm speaking, it's like, somebody who's masking being autistic is still autistic, like just because they be showing you that in that moment, like that's still who they are 100% of the time. So I feel like I wouldn't say that I'm bi-dialectal or bilingual, but I would say that I can speak both AAE and mainstream American English. I just speak them together, like I forgot what the word is for that. There is a word for it though.
Translanguaging.
Something. It's not right.
It's not. You're not talking about code switching.
No, it's not code meshing.
All in one.
I think it's called code meshing. I want to say code meshing. I'm going to double check that after this. But I'm pretty sure code meshing is like, this is what you do all the time. Like you don't switch in and out. It would be like Spanglish, like you're speaking both at the same time. I feel like that's what, yeah, I feel like I code mesh. But I will say that I also think the ability to do so makes me a better clinician. I think it's really similar to how it's been proven that like kids who grow up bilingual are like their brain works better. They use more of their brain. Like they have to mature faster. They become more intelligent quicker because they're using more parts of their brain. I feel like that has something to do with what I do as well. And you just like, I think it helps you take different perspectives. There's just so much more context, Yeah.
100%. I'm thinking about your comment about bilingual. We had talked about different people, mainly like white professionals, trying to like beef up their resumes by saying they're bilingual, trilingual, when they are not necessarily fully bilingual. They don't really have like the rich culture behind it and all that stuff. And it's just so funny that certain things that are to beef up resumes are just part of our regular community and life. Mm-hmm. And to us, it was like we had to hide our language. We had to just really like fit in. And then to another group of people, all the things we hid away are like their gifts and they're praised for. It makes no sense.
Exactly. And it's such a skill. Like when I think about like my friends who were in second, first, third grade, who were translating for their parents, interpreting for their parents, and like, yes, and like medical situations, talking to their teachers, like serious stuff. And I'm like, how mature you have to be able to do that. And like, especially if your parents are immigrants, like everything is on you. I don't think they get enough credit for what they do. Like it is so much work. It is so much like your capacity in your brain has to be expansive because you have to do so much at one time. I don't think bilingual SLPs get paid enough, but like at all.
Yeah.
I don't, like, a lot of times there's not even a difference, which is wild to me.
I don't get paid anymore.
Exactly, which is ridiculous. Like, you do
Yeah.
so much more work, literally.
Like, we talked about that on Saturday and on a Zoom. I don't get paid anymore, but I have a setup where I only have 3 days at my school, and 2 days are for my bilingual work. And I rather have that setup than have the extra $5,000 and be overworked.
Yeah.
So we talked about that with the students. Like, yes, ask for more money, but ask for your workload to be calculated correctly.
Exactly.
But I was just going to tell you, like, you saying that, I have a funny story. When I moved to the US when I was 16 and a half, so it was like in the middle of my junior year, I was talking to the counselor in the high school, and my parents were there. And I had my transcript from my school, and I was very, very lucky to be coming from a private high school in Mexico who printed my transcript. They printed my transcript in English, which is like a humongous privilege. So I'm sitting there talking to this counselor, explaining to them that I'm from this school and I took all these classes in English so they could place me in the right position. And we leave, and my mom's like, I didn't know you spoke English like that. And I'm like, what do you think you've been paying for all these years? Like, because my parents didn't learn English until then. So like when we moved here, they started taking night classes at the community college to learn English. But yeah, I remember being 16, sitting there doing grown-up things, signing myself up for high school. And then my mom in awe was just like, I didn't know you spoke English like that.
Yeah.
It's
impressive. Yeah. I'm sure she was impressed.
She was impressed.
I went to French elementary school, and like everyone's parents helped them with their homework. And I remember asking my dad for help with like this math problem, and I had to translate the French math problem to English for him to have to, and he couldn't help me anyway. The whole thing was a mess. But I was just thinking, like, only now in this conversation am I seeing what a skill that was. I didn't even think about it. Yeah, all the letters that came home, like permission slips and stuff, I had to explain to my parents what it said and where we were going. Oh yeah. Well, my mom, like you, took classes, so she was able to get some French, but my dad really incredible. Yeah. So there are two things I want us to do before we close up. So we have our last words. We just kind of take what we can from the conversation and have a word or an expression that we're thinking about. So that'll be the last thing we do. But just before that, Jordyn, I feel like you are in a lot of things, courses, this, that, and I want you to plug in all the things so that people can know where to find you, what to do, how to take your course, all the things.
Yes. So I just finished the course with credit, which was extra credit. And it was confronting anti-Black racism in communicative sciences and disorders. It was a great class. And it'll be offered again in December. So I highly suggest it. We learned a lot. It was really awesome to facilitate. And it was a room full of white women, like, and AC, who was a white man. So it was really interesting. And I feel like they appreciated a lot. And I felt that appreciation. So we learned a lot from each other in that class. I highly recommend it. I don't really have, yes, I do. SLP Social Scene. Listen, if you are going to ASHA in November, which is in New Orleans this year, it's a great, I'm not saying ASHA is a great event. You know, it's good for you to get CEUs, to go to the ASHA convention, but I will also be throwing the SLP Social Scene, which is the only dedicated space for SLPs to come together and get unprofessional. There will be an open bar, DJ, all the things, photo booth. And yeah, that is also the same day as the Black SLP Magic Conference, which is held by Essex Health. Definitely come through. I'm on Etsy and I'm on JRC the SLP on Instagram. So yes, check out all of the above.
Amazing.
We will link all of that in the episode for sure.
Show notes. All right. I'm ready for my last words. It is brilliant bilinguals. Because I just learned from this podcast. Oh yeah, the brilliance of these children. I already knew they knew a lot, but like the skill set is what people are legitimately paid to do. in terms of interpreters and translators. So brilliant bilinguals is my little words.
I think mine is being genuine. I think that that's what draws so many people to Jordyn's page and Jordyn's videos. Like, she's so genuine about her advocacy and so genuine about her struggles and genuine about her strengths. Like, just genuine, just be a whole human, just be genuine. That's what I'm taking away from this conversation.
Yes, that's good. Brene Brown, who I like to talk about, but like, again, she's a white woman, and there's probably other people who said this before her, but she has some great work. But one of the things that she's talked about is living wholeheartedly, not being afraid of being vulnerable, and just like really living as your whole self, like not hiding parts of yourself. And I feel like that really, like, I really took that to heart, and it helped me. I read it to help me in a relationship, but like, it helped me in life in general. I feel like it's opened me to making new connections. It's opened me to like not care what people think when I post stuff. Like, I post what I care about, and I hope other people care about it, you know, like that's the goal. But if they don't, like, they'll know that I do. And I think that's what matters to me the most. So yeah, that would be my last words, is post about what you care about, talk about what you care about. Don't worry about whatever reaction people are going to have, because you care about it for a reason. So people need to hear that.
Love it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Here.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening and supporting the Bold SLP Collective. You can find a closed caption version of this podcast on our YouTube channel. We will also have show notes on our website. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you do all the podcast things. Follow, subscribe, download, and review. And don't forget, we love hearing from you, so connect with us on Instagram at the Bold SLP Collective. Stay bold and humble. See you next time.